The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks on returning South Africans lured into fighting for the Russian forces in Ukraine. The talks happened in the backdrop of South African government receiving some distress calls from about 17 men who were trapped in the epicenter of the fighting in Ukraine's Donbas region last November. Now, these men were allegedly tricked into joining the mercenary forces, and Ukraine's foreign minister back in November had alleged that over 1,400 citizens from 36 African nations had been identified amongst the Russian ranks. And according to the South African President's office, Ramaphosa and Putin had pledged their support to the process of returning South Africans fighting alongside the Russian forces in Ukraine. Ramaphosa's office said that teams from both sides will continue with their engagements towards the finalization of this process. The daughter of South African former President Jacob Zuma is among several accused of recruiting men to join the Russian mercenaries in the Ukraine war. The Pretoria warned its citizens last year not to fall for recruitment scams after multiple social media influencers shared campaigns promising young women jobs in the Russia-based program that's been accused of abuses. And our correspondent Calvin Ongmu has been tracking the story very closely for us from Johannesburg in South Africa. Listen in.
Finally, the family members of the 17 South African men who were lured to Russia for bodyguard training but was made to fight alongside Russian troops in Ukraine can have some hope. The families had made a direct plea to President Cyril Ramaphosa to intervene and bring the men back home who left South Africa in July last year. In a statement from the presidency, it was stated that President Ramaphosa and Russian President Vladimir Putin have pledged their support to process the returning of these South African men. It has been reported that the men are in dire state and they are being forced to continue fighting even after being injured and paralyzed. This is Calvin Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION The World is One.